Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining me for what I think is a profoundly necessary conversation today. We're going to be talking about a specific event in modern Indian history, one that didn't just expose a deep wound in the nation's social fabric, but really forced a moment of collective reckoning. We're talking, of course, about the December 2012 Delhi gang rape case. The victim, a 23-year-old physiotherapy intern, was posthumously given the name Nirbhaya, meaning the fearless one. Chapter 1, That Fateful Night. So, to understand the sheer impact of this incident, we need to go back to the basic facts. It was the evening of December 16, 2012, a Sunday. Jyoti Singh, as she was later identified, and her male friend had been to see Life of Pi at a mall in Saket, South Delhi. They were regular young people, just finishing up a night out. Now they hailed what they thought was a public transport bus, a charter bus on their way home. But what happened next? What happened over the next couple of hours on that moving bus was a crime of such unthinkable, savage brutality that it truly sent shockwaves not just through Delhi, but across the entire world. See, the assault on Jyoti was not just an act of rape. It was an act of torture. She was viciously beaten, sexually assaulted, and internally mutilated by 6 men on that bus. And then the perpetrators, in a final act of cold, detached cruelty, they dumped both her and her friend on the side of a highway, naked and grievously wounded, and they drove away. So this wasn't just a crime. It was a public declaration of violence, a brazen act that seemed to say, we can do this, and we will get away with it. And for many people, the sheer impunity of the crime was almost as shocking as the crime itself. Chapter 2, The Eruption of Outrage. Then Jyoti fought for her life for nearly 2 weeks. She was flown to Mount Elizabeth Hospital in Singapore for specialized treatment, but the damage was simply too extensive, and she passed away on December 29, 2012. Now, while the nation mourned, something crucial began to happen. The grief quickly morphed into a furious collective rage. See, for too long, issues of sexual violence against women in India had been swept under the carpet, minimized or blamed on the victim. But this case, Nirbhaya's case, was different. It hit a nerve. So you saw these unprecedented protests, not just small, isolated groups, but massive, sustained movements of people, primarily students and young people, occupying the streets of Delhi, surrounding India Gate and the presidential palace. They weren't just demanding justice for Nirbhaya. They were demanding a fundamental change in the entire system. They were shouting, "We are done with the status quo." They were saying, "We as citizens are no longer going to tolerate a society where women cannot feel safe." And this is a key point to understand. The protests were not just about the four walls of a courtroom. They were about the larger culture of misogyny, the flawed policing system, and the slow, agonizing pace of the Indian judicial process. Chapter 3, Legislative Response and Reform. Now the government had to respond. The sheer weight of public opinion was too heavy to ignore. And this is where the lasting legacy of the case is really cemented. So in the immediate aftermath, a high-level committee, led by former Chief Justice of India J.S. Verma, was constituted to recommend changes to the law. And based on these recommendations, the Indian Parliament passed the Criminal Law Amendment Act 2013. This act was revolutionary. It did several things. First, it redefined sexual assault. It broadened the definition of rape to include various forms of penetration and sexual violence, moving away from a very narrow, outdated definition. Then, it introduced new criminal offenses like acid attacks, sexual harassment, stalking, and voyeurism. These were acts that had previously been dismissed as minor incidents, but were now recognized as serious, crimes that undermine a woman's sense of safety and agency. And finally, it increased the maximum punishment for rape, introducing the death penalty for repeat offenders, or for cases where the victim is left in a vegetative state or dies, which of course was exactly what happened to Nirbhaya. So essentially, the law recognized the severity of these offenses in a way it never had before. This was a moment where the system did buckle under public pressure, and it did make concrete changes. The people had spoken and the law responded. Chapter 4, The Judicial Marathon. Now let's talk about the legal proceedings, because they were a marathon. The trial for the 6 accused, 6 men, one of whom was a minor, began quickly. The minor, due to Indian juvenile justice laws, was tried separately and was sent to a reform facility for 3 years, the maximum sentence possible under the existing juvenile laws at the time. The 4 adult men, Mukesh Singh, Vinay Sharma, Pawan Gupta, and Akshay Thakur were tried in a fast-track court. And after a very long, complex legal battle, which included appeals all the way up to the Supreme Court of India, these 4 men were eventually convicted and sentenced to death. But the appeals, the delays, the constant legal maneuvers, this process took over 7 years. For over 7 years, the family of Nirbhaya had to fight every step of the way just to see the sentence upheld. So what does this tell us? It tells us that while the law can be changed, the justice system itself often moves at a glacial pace. And so, the very public waiting for justice became a symbol of the larger, national yearning for a justice system that is both swift and certain. Finally, in a landmark moment, on March 20th, 2020, the 4 convicted adult men were executed. And while this brought a certain closure for the family and for many in the nation, it also reignited the debate about capital punishment. Conclusion: fearless legacy. So where do we stand today? The name Nirbhaya is no longer just a name. It's a symbol. It symbolizes the tragedy of violence, yes, but more importantly, it symbolizes the potential for mass mobilization and systemic change. Now, while the laws are certainly better, we must always ask, are women safer? And the reality is that the root cause, the patriarchal, misogynistic mindset that views women as property or objects, that mindset is much harder to legislate against. We still see horrific cases reported every single day. The crime rate, particularly against women, remains tragically high. So the lesson of Nirbhaya is twofold. First, never underestimate the power of public outrage to force legislative change. Second, understand that changing a law is only the beginning. The real, difficult work of achieving justice is changing the culture, ensuring that the police, the judiciary, and every single citizen treat women's safety not as a political issue, but as a foundational human right. So let's commit to remembering Nirbhaya, the fearless one, and making her legacy one of true, lasting safety and dignity for every girl and woman in India.